start right now living an extraordinary life. Join your life coach and favorite auntie, Carla D. Tillery, and co-host LA on the Chair Chronicles. Having those important life talks and giving you advice to help you live your best life.
Well, let's dive right on in. What is the question for today?
So today we're going to deal with things not to say to your children. To your children.
Good one.
We are still on the power of words.
Yes.
And that's how we opened up the season. So
Yes.
if you have not heard the earlier episodes, please go back.
Yes.
Because our opening for the season, our live podcast,
Yes.
we talked about how words create,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They can create things, and we have to be careful what we're speaking,
Right.
so that we're speaking and creating life and not speaking and creating death.
Yes.
And it's so amazing how words have such this energy around it, that it attracts what
Yes.
we say.
It really does.
So what are you saying to your children?
Whoa. This is a big one.
This is a big one. This is a big one because I've raised two sons. I know you've raised your niece and nephew.
Yes.
And so we've, had challenges,
Oh, yeah.
communication up and down the line.
Yes.
We said some things.
Yes.
They said some things.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think even talking about this with some of my clients today about things that they're saying and how impactful those words are having, whether intentional or not intentional. What we want to do is start intentionality on what we create with our words.
True. Very true. And let's just be clear. Things that are said to us in jest, in anger, in happiness, those things have a lasting effect. So like you said, we put it out in the atmosphere and it has life. It really does. Because I'm sure we all can remember things that were said to us, whether we were a child or as an adult. And it could have been 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And something will trigger and you'll remember.
You'll remember. That's right. The recall. And it's amazing the mind or even the power of memory to recall something that you thought was suppressed or you thought you had removed or dealt with.
Right.
And then things that we're saying to our children end up coming back into our adulthood.
Yes.
And sometimes it doesn't show up well. It shows up in a hurtful situation. It shows up when an incident occurs. It shows up in our relationships with our partners and with other people and in the workplace because of something that was said to us when we were children. And now we're living it out and not realizing that the words over you that was spoken over you have done some damage. I know.
Well, we know better. We are going to do better.
We're going to do better.
Is great. So let's unpack.
All right. So the first one is, let's deal with this one.
Okay.
This has to do with your emotions, our emotions.
Okay.
Stop crying. You'll be fine.
Ooh.
Stop crying. You'll be fine. Now, I know I've said that.
Yeah. I said it.
I know I
said it and I've been on the receiving end of that.
Right. Exactly. I've said it and been on the receiving end. Absolutely.
Yes,
My parents have definitely told me to stop crying.
Yeah.
And I've seen parents on airplanes. I've seen parents in grocery stores deal with their children, perhaps having a tantrum or perhaps something else is going on. And you just want them to stop crying. Mainly because it's embarrassing if you out in public.
Exactly.
Right? You don't want to be that one parent.
Everybody saying that you're like,
everybody's looking.
Get him, her under control. Right.
And you got, all of this going on and you're drawing all of that attention. So we're like, stop crying. You'll be fine. Stop crying. And so what we're not doing is really trying to figure out what exactly is going on in some cases. Figuring out what's going on. And we have to do better as parents and as adults, with managing our emotions, not trying to necessarily stop an emotion.
Right.
It's hard. That's hard. That can be very challenging.
Yes.
So imagine how it is for an adult in an adult situation and you're on a rage, and someone's trying to get you to calm down and because it wasn't taught sometimes when you were a child, then you grow up as an adult not learning how to do that. You're just told to stop, but you're not taught how to manage it.
That's true.
Yeah. That's true. And so 9 times out of 10, if that person is hurt and they crying, you can say stop all you want to. They might keep
Actually,
trying.
it's going to make it worse.
It's going to make it
like,
worse.
You're discounting what I'm saying, So, yeah.
Right. So we have to learn how to teach our children how to manage their emotions, right? A lot of times that's going to come with exploring, because depending on the situation and depending on the emotion, you might have a different strategy for how to manage it.
Everything is not a tantrum. There could really be something wrong, or they're just not happy, or there's something. And sometimes it just takes a little bit more probing. And we're not saying coddle and all of that, but we're saying what's wrong.
What's wrong?
You get them to talk about it. Right. And that in itself, by you paying attention that they're having this break, will get them to calm down. To calm down, yeah.
So I was just recently with a young man, and he had an injury, and he was laying on the floor, and he was crying. I never asked him to stop crying. And a lot of times I know it can be an instinct to tell young boys not to cry. Right. So what I did say, because you can see the emotion rising, what I didn't want is for a panic attack to occur, or for there to be a sudden movement that might cause more injury to whatever the situation already was occurring. So what I told him, I said, take deep breaths. I said, every time you feel the pain, take deep breaths. I reassured him. I said, you are going to be fine. We're going to make sure you get to the doctor. I said, so you can relax. And I said, when you feel yourself, and I just described it, right? Because sometimes you can't put words or emotion in. Like, like when you feel all of this going on, just breathe through it. And I started breathing with him to get him to calm down. Wonderful. So that was a way to manage the emotion without me telling him, stop crying. But he was in pain.
Yeah, and you acknowledge that. When you're in pain, you cry.
You cry. Right. Perfect. And so sometimes what we need to do is speak what we want to occur, right? Versus sometimes trying to tell someone to stop doing something, right?
Yeah. That's a great way to really look at it, and not stop the emotion, but help to facilitate a different reaction to it. And how to, like you said, how to manage
the emotions. Yes. Yeah. And oftentimes that comes also with anyone, children or adults that are dealing with grief. And again, the emotions, the sadness, the feeling depressed. And a lot of times we don't say what to do. We just tell them to stop. You should be over it by now. Right. A friend or your child, in a relationship with someone, because that puppy love, you know how it is. And the kids are all excited, and then they break up, and then they're falling apart. And sometimes what we don't do is acknowledge that they feel some kind of way about it. Right? And you're like, you should get over it by now.
Even if you're happy, you're like,
and that's not really love. And so it's like, to that child, they feel like they was in love, and
there'll never be anybody else. And so acknowledge, like you said, acknowledge that they're hurting, but reassure them it's going to be okay. But let them have their moment. Let them have their moment without dismissing it. So
and so it's something that we need to learn how to do, is to validate emotions, experiences, even for our children, and then help them facilitate the journey to get through it.
Love it.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
So do you have one?
Yes.
What you got?
I do everything for you.
You do? I do everything for you. Yeah, that's a strong one. A very strong one. And that sometimes can be used when adults are having an issue with each other sometimes. And so it's like, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing everything for you, and you are doing nothing. And so that can pin a parent against another parent in the child's mind. So we do have to be careful about, I do everything for you.
And that's a great way of thinking about it, even going that step beyond, because you're thinking automatically, when I hear that, I'm thinking the child is thinking, okay, but I'm not thinking about the person that says it. Okay, I might have a problem with your dad or with your mom, but I'm going to let you know I'm the one that's doing everything. So it's like, okay, the validation you need is not from the child. You're looking for something from your spouse saying, honey, I appreciate you. So it does. It puts the child in an awkward position. And then they start to take that on, thinking, well, okay. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Feeling And what is the child supposed to do with that? Now, in some cases, I think we as adults are trying to tell our children, look, can you respect and honor my efforts and what I'm going through? Like, you see sometimes what parents are going through, and sometimes we want the children to show gratitude, be grateful, and all those things.
Then be direct. Say for instance, the child has a task of cleaning their room. Week after week, you're saying the same thing. Instead of saying, I do everything for you. Say, listen, I would really appreciate it if you would take the time and clean your room like I've asked you to.
Let's partner with the space that we live in.
Right.
And this is your responsibility, and this is my responsibility.
Right.
When I take care of my stuff, I'm expecting, like, we have an expectation that you're going to do your part.
Right. Because let's just be clear. When you decide to become a parent, that is a choice.
It is a choice.
And yes, you are going to be doing a lot more than what you probably thought you would, depending upon the age of the child.
Right. There are different seasons and levels of effort that come with child rearing.
So, yeah.
And saying that also can diminish even what the children are doing from their perspective, right? So, again, sometimes kids get frustrated because they don't feel like they have a voice. They don't feel like they're being acknowledged, or they're having to suppress so many different things. Right. Now, this is in certain situations. Right. We can't cover every situation because there may be some exceptions, right, where there might be it might make sense to say that. But again, it's just like there are certain things you don't want to put out there in the atmosphere. Right. So let's be mindful of that. Yeah. Right.
Very good. So what else do you have?
So I have this one, and I will say this one is really disturbing to hear, and I can't wait to hear your feedback on it. Okay. You're just like your mother, or you're just like your father. That, and I understand because of just the DNA and genetics, and we pick up certain genes from our parents and personality traits, but that has so much damage. Now, most of the time, well, some of the time when parents are saying that, they're pretty, or you're pretty just like your mother. Right. Like, of course, we're not going to think that that's damaging, right? Right. But what I will say is that we have to be conscientious about identity and how that starts to form and shape in one's mind. Right. And we take away from one's own uniqueness, one's own identity traits when we do a lot of comparison, even to their mothers and their fathers. Right.
And I find that especially when the parents are not together. Whether they were never married, whether they, Right. And especially if it's a lot of contention. A lot of stress between the two, and they're at tug of war. When you say so, or the person might not have the best character, And we don't have to go into what that could be, but think about a child hearing you're just like your dad, or you're just like your mom.
And I think, every now and then it's probably not having that much of an impact. Right. But when these words are repeated over and over again, the next thing you know is that everything you see, the good and the bad, when you say you're just like, then you start to put that out there. Your child will start to emulate everything about that person that you just said they were like. Yeah. And I'm talking the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right. And so we have to be careful, because she might be pretty like her daughter, but she might have some other things that's going on that you might not want your daughter to have. So just, we have to be mindful of what we're saying, because we don't know what's going to get attracted to that when we say, oh, you're just like your mother, or you're just like your father. Right.
Don't take away their uniqueness. They're their own person. Yeah, we all have some characteristics or some mannerisms. I've been told that I sound just like my mom.
Okay. Right.
I can handle that. But we have to be careful, because I'm still Latricia.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And so we have to learn how to reinforce uniqueness and the identity of our own child. And you know what else comes into play is twins. Or siblings that are close in age. Right. Because that comes up very often. Oh, you're little so-and-so. You're just like your big brother. You're just like your big sister. And that can be so damaging. And so we have to be careful that we are creating our children to form and shape into their own identity.
Yeah. That's a really
their
good
own identity.
Yeah.
You know, and again, a lot of times it's not even said with, any malice or any intent to harm the child in any way. It's just saying, like, I saw something over here that looked just like what you just did, right? But we do have to be careful. I think I told, a situation between my sister and I because we were going to the same high school. And so the minute I got there as a freshman, everyone associated me with, your little Joy sister. No one knew my name. And that was so frustrating to me. I'm like, I have my own name. My name on my birth certificate is not little Joy's sister.
Right.
And so, it was a fight for me to try to make sure that people knew who I was, right? And I wanted my own space. I wanted my own place in the high school. It was high school, so you know how hard high school was.
Oh, yes.
Already. You try to fit in. You don't know, you might not know a lot of the upperclassmen. You want to make a good impression. You want to look good. You want to be that popular person sometimes.
And not connected to your sibling.
Or not connected all the time to you. Now my sister had big shoes to fill, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna wear my size.
I like
she was extremely smart, popular, the principal, all the teachers knew her, and I was just like, okay, like this is too much.
Do I
so it's about having your own and enforcing your children to have their own identity.
Love that one.
And walking in their own space.
Yeah. It's a good one. It's a good one. Okay, well, this one is very sensitive.
Okay.
Don't eat that or else you're going to get fat.
That's a lot in there.
Yeah.
Don't eat that because if you eat that, you're going to get fat. Yeah. We live in such a society where imaging is huge.
It is.
And I mean, it's a struggle for adults. And so for children are coming up with all of these images, social media, what they see in the movies, what they see on these model magazines. And people are trying to do all kinds of things to their bodies to replicate an image of something else that they believe is the right image to have. So we as parents, do we absolutely need to be conscientious about what our children are eating? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Should we be more conscientious that what we're giving and providing our children is on the healthy spectrum? Absolutely. Yeah. But we have to be careful how we do it because you can tear and break your children down. And most cases, when people are just saying, you're going to get fat, then there's a trigger in that child. And the next thing you know, the only things they're doing is eating unhealthy food. And they can gain a lot of weight. Because that's what they've heard over and over again. You're going to get fat. You're going to get fat. You're going to get fat. And we're not saying what we want them to do. So using the power of words again to say, you know what? Let's eat this because this is healthier for us. So let's try eating this as opposed to this. You can do it without even putting the word out there, fat, and what not to eat. Show them what they should eat.
Yeah. And let's just be clear. Culturally, this can be very different for, depending upon your culture. There are parts of this country, even here in the U.S., where, having a little girth is a good thing.
It's a good thing, right? Yeah.
Because my parents are from the South, and I've heard, stories of if you were too small, if you were skinny, they thought that you were sickly. You needed to eat, you know?
And in other countries where the women have a little girth, as you say, recognizes and it represents that they're rich and that they have a high economic status because they have food and they're eating and so they're wealthy. And so it is interesting in different cultures how that is viewed.
And so we have to be careful of body shaming and again, especially when we're talking about our children, they deal with enough. And I'm sure if you have a son or daughter who has gained a lot of weight, like you said, either, by them being, just snacking and hiding and things like that. You want to encourage, and again, this is not encouraging them to fit this mode or model look, but what's healthy for them, you know. And like you said, there's a way to do that without having to say, you better not eat that, you're gonna get fat, you know. Because let's just be clear, we've seen especially women, we've seen women try to alter what they look like,
alter their
and
bodies,
end up losing limbs and really going through some really horrifying things with their bodies just to look a certain way. Yeah, absolutely. Be careful.
And there is an increase in younger children, even teenagers, wanting to have surgical procedures. They're wanting to change their nose. They're wanting to change their breasts. They're wanting to do all of these things at such a young age because of things that are being said to them. And it also can lead our children into having some of these eating disorders.
Yes.
They could become bulimic. Yeah. They could, doing things that just really fasting and not in a healthy way, not in a monitored way, but they just stop eating all of a sudden because they feel like they're going to get fat because they've been told that.
Right. And I mean, just by you saying the word bulimic, it just struck a chord with me because in my freshman year of college, a young woman that lived in the dorm with us, and she was quite on the heavy side. The next semester she came back and we didn't even recognize her. And, we were like, oh, what did you do? How'd you lose the weight? And believe it or not, her father, she said she was always kind of on the heavy side. It was her dad that was browbeating her about being fat. And I mean, she was very honest about it. And he said to her that if she lost the weight, he would buy her a red Corvette.
Wow.
She came back second semester with a red Corvette. And she also had bulimia.
And so now her body is going through all of these changes to try to look a certain way that her father wanted her to look like.
Right.
And so now she is putting her body through all of these things, but yet is trying to reap a reward.
Right.
And probably mentally and emotionally is struggling.
Yeah.
Just struggling.
Yeah. And it was sad to see it happen. And I mean, we found out by accident because we caught her and her roommate spoke to us about it. And she didn't come back after that. We only saw her that my freshman year. We did not see her after that.
Yes.
And I always thought about that. And I'm like, I couldn't even imagine trying to get approval. I want to look the way he wants me to look. And, and I mean, I'm not saying that maybe she should have worked on her health. I don't know how bad it was or how detrimental her being, the size that she was. But to do that.
Right.
Because of being literally body shamed.
Right.
Hearing that, like you said, day after day.
Day after day. Right. Because then at some point you want to respond to it.
Right.
And sometimes the response can take you down a road that can be very challenging to come back from.
Right.
Right. Because she's doing these things to try to please her father, which you wholeheartedly can understand.
Right.
But again, the power of words to instill within your children that they don't look well because of what they're eating and how they're eating it. And yes, do we need to control and make, again, we got to go back. Yes, we want a healthy environment. So what are we doing as parents to kind of create a healthy environment to either have the conversation, to make sure we have the right tools. And in some cases, you have to change the cupboards. You have to change everything that's in the cabinets. You do it together as a family.
I was going to say, make it a fun event. Make it something that you do together. So they don't feel pinpointed and this is because
singled
of you.
out. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we're not in the best shape ourselves.
Let's just be clear.
And we try to tell our children, because we don't want them to repeat some of our patterns. But then, we're not doing anything about it, but we expect our children to do something about it.
Right.
Yeah. And so we've gotta walk this. We gotta walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah. So we really do have to be mindful. And I get it. We are an emotional people. We're human, and so we say things. We say things off the cuff sometime, and because we're emotional and all of that.
Yes.
But I think, like you said, if we just take that 2-minute rule to step back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is good. The power of words, things not to say to your children. Yeah. So if you have a common expression you've heard or that someone has told you that's had an impact on you, please share it with us. We would love to continue this conversation with you. We absolutely hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you would like it and that you would share it because we want everyone to instill within our children some positive messaging through the power of words. The power of words. So let's create life, right? Let's not create death. Let's have everything in the atmosphere, all of the energy work for our good. So I'm so excited that you decided to tune in with us today. We want you to live your best life. And as always, stay tuned and stay connected on The Chair Chronicles.